And just as normal rules that we can keep our microphone muted so that other people can speak. And we can also, if you wish, you can connect allows, turn on your camera during the discussion time. And also you have a question, if you have a question or any comments, you can post it in the chat box. And if you in the question and answer session, you can also virtually raise your hand via MS Teams. It is a normal rules that we always follow. And we are happy to inform you that this is our 20th event since we started the webinar series in 2015. And we are happy that you all are celebrating this 20th event webinar series with all of us. And I would like to give you some program schedule today. This program is actually this. I will inform you that this is monitoring by me, Mohammed Istiaq Hossain. I am working as a technical advisor in the adaptation to climate change into the National Local Development Planning project from Bangladesh, Dhaka GRZ office. And also I'm a joint speaker of TUrBOCLiC. And this topic, today's topic is very interesting. Our topic is about new Leipzig Charta, the transformative power of cities for the common good. Mr. Tilman Buchholz will presenting this presentation, and he is the deputy head of the unit urban development policy at the Federal Ministry of Interior, Building and Communities. I will give a short brief about him later on, and this session also will be actually we have also connecting with Mr. Carl Philip Schuck, but due to this urgent meeting, same as Vaishali, they cannot attend in this meeting, but I think Lucy can manage it efficiently. And regarding this topic, I would like to inform you that this Leipzig Charta thinks that the Leipzig Charter on Sustainable European Cities and its update as the new Leipzig Charter 2020 are the guiding documents for the German National Urban Development Policy. The new Leipzig Charter is strategically oriented towards urban development policy in Europe. It focuses on the common good and empowered municipalities. But what are the concrete dimensions of action and key principles of good urban policy? Where is the an urgent need for action? Can the rational and guiding principles of urban development for the common good become an export you to join the discussion on this and other questions around the National Urban Development Policy and new Leipzig Charter? Lucy, cannot see your.
Oh, sorry. I just we don't have any slides anymore. You can introduce Mr.
Buchholz. I just before hand over to Mr. Tilman Buchholz, I would like to give a short bio about him. Mr. Tilman Buchholz is a deputy head of the unit urban development policy at the Federal Ministry of the Interior, Building and Community. In this function, his focal points are the National Urban Development Policy in Germany, with its different format and projects, research in urban development, European affairs in urban development, including the urban agenda for the EU, as well as the European Structural Fund. On behalf of the ministry, he is a member of the Urban Development Group in the framework of the informal cooperation of the EU members states on urban development issues. In this position, he was chair of the UDG meeting under German European Union Council Presidency 2020. He is the German representative in the TUrBOCLiC Monitoring Committee and in the Assembly of the European Urban Knowledge Network. In short, it is known as EUKN. He has been responsible for the preparatory process on national and European level regarding the new Leipzig Charter and the implementation document concerning the follow-up of the urban agenda for the EU, as well as for the informal ministerial meeting on urban development under German EU Council presidency in November 2020. I think we talked a lot. Now we can see the presentation, and Mr. Tilman Buchholz, is over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this kind introduction into this meeting today. And yeah, good morning or morning. It's only for me, I think, or for a very few of us. So good afternoon to you. It's a pleasure for me to be with you, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to explain a little bit what this document, the new Leipzig Charter, is about, what the main messages of this document are, what the characteristic of this document is, and what the kind of consequences we now draw from this document. So I would like to give you an overview over the main topics of this new Leipzig Charter. So what kind of document is it that we are talking about? It's, as you can see here on the slide, a document that was developed in the framework of the informal cooperation on urban development in the European Union. So it's a truly European document. It has been adopted under German EU Council presidency, as it has been said. We have this system of rotating presidencies in the European Union, and last year it was Germany that was chairing this council. And we had a ministerial meeting end of last year, and this was an informal meeting on urban development, and there this document, the new Leipzig Charter, was indeed adopted, and it was signed, as you may say, by all ministers in the European Union that are responsible for urban development. Plus, we had also what we call partner states like Switzerland and Norway, which are not part of the EU, but nevertheless always included in our debates. And we had also all the European institutions and organizations around the table. So it was a very large group. It was. It's a document that was produced within this informal cooperation on urban matters. That's a specific thing that at the European scale we do not have a competence for urban development. Urban development is a competence of the member states, not of the European institutions. So we have a kind of informal cooperation only in urban development, more or less exchange of experiences, things like that. And in that framework, this document was developed. It's called New Leipzig Charter, and you might wonder why this title. The reason is simple. In 2007, we had the last European Council presidency for Germany, and there we had an informal ministerial meeting as well that took place in Leipzig, in the city of Leipzig, and at that time the so-called Leipzig Charter on sustainable European cities was adopted, and what we had last year was kind of a refreshment of this document of 2007, a kind of update of this major document, which is really the basis of integrated urban development, not only in Germany but also in the other EU member states. So we had good reasons to come back to that kind of document and make it as a main topic of that informal ministerial last year. So it is not a formal document, not a legal act or whatsoever. It's a strategic document, a framework for action, you might call it, and it is in its nature informal. It is voluntary and non-binding, and that is, I think, extremely important that we have this this kind of informality in this document. And I think nothing else is possible in this framework where all these where this document was produced. Yeah, what kind of process was it? That was also very interesting. I think the basis of the success we had with the agreement on this document was that we started a very inclusive process, consultation process already 2 years ago, or 2 years before the adoption of that document. On the one hand, we had a very broad national discussion with national stakeholders in Germany on the content of this charter, and on the other hand, of course, we had this European debate with all the member states and European organizations and institutions, the European Parliament, the European Commission, and other committees as well. So that was a very intensive process and extremely inclusive. And yeah, we had also, as a basis for our discussion, several scientific studies that feed into the process. And the next slide, please. On the next slide, you can see the structure of the new Leipzig Charter. Yes, thank you so much. So it's quite a simple structure, as you can see here. It's only 5 chapters, starting with a preamble and ending with a closing appeal. So it's very typical for this kind of documents. Well, I will come back and explain the content of these specific chapters of the new Leipzig Charter. The full title is The Transformative Power of Cities for the Common Good. And the next slide, please. There you can see a glimpse of this whole document, and you see this box on the top left side of this graphic here. We have 5 key principles of good urban governance, as the new Leipzig Charter calls them, like the policy for the common good or the integrated approach, and several other key principles. And these key principles are applied to the 3 dimensions of the European cities, what you see in the center of this graphic here: the just city, the green city, the productive city. These 3 dimensions are also applied at 3 spatial levels of the European city. That is the neighborhood level, the city as a whole, and the functional urban area. And on the bottom line of this graphic, you see also a basic element of this document, where we have a lot of statements regarding empowerment of cities. What the question is, what do cities need? What kind of support do cities need to translate all these principles into practice, into reality? Okay, that's the new Leipzig Charter in a nutshell. The next slide. We start with a preamble, and well, the preamble, of course, refers to all these global agreements that you very well know, the SDGs on a global level, the new urban agenda of UN Habitat, the Paris Climate Agreement, and other global global documents. And also, of course, this preamble refers to all the challenges that we face in our cities, and of course you well know all of these challenges, from climate change to migration, demographics, or globalization, and pandemics as well. That was something that we had to add last year to the charter, and the kind of red thread through the whole document is this idea of the common good. The idea is how to create a better life of citizens in our cities, how to fight against rising inequalities in our societies and in our cities. And then finally also the preamble calls for more action to support cities. Yeah, the next slide, please. This next slide here is what is the starting point in our European discussion was. The new Leipzig Charta highlights what the specific characteristics of the European cities are. The European cities are based on long traditions, on democratic rights and values, specific values, solidarity, pluralism. All these values are mentioned in this charter. And what is also typical for the European city landscape or city structure is that we have a very polycentric network of cities, of small cities, medium-sized cities, big cities, but the majority is really small cities. And another specificity of the European cities is that they should be compact and mixed and dense, and they are also characterized by high quality public urban spaces that are accessible to all. And then we have also this feature of Baukultur, which means high quality planning processes that are also a basis. And the next slide, the next slide shows a little bit more what you could even show the full slide. Yeah. It shows what we had to add last year for this charter. In fact, we had finalized the discussion on the charter in the end of 2019, which means before the pandemic. Then we faced this this brand new situation last year, and we discussed what do we have to add to the charter, where do we have to change the charter to respond to this new kind of crisis. And we concluded that there was not so much need to really adapt this charter, because all the principles we had already agreed on are still absolutely valid, also with regard to a pandemic situation. Nevertheless, we added a subchapter on resilience of cities. Resilience of cities means that cities have to be able to react to external disruptive events like we have the pandemic, or also to chronic stress, which is climate change for sure. And therefore, cities need to be able to learn from past events and adopt their situation. We highlighted the need to really implement these three urban dimensions that I will come later back to it in a balanced way, and we need predictive planning, risk scenarios to anticipate challenges, and to really act in a preventive manner. And of course, cities have to be equipped for this purpose. The next chapter, next slide. There we turn to these three dimensions, these three urban dimensions of the European cities. Just green, productive. The next slide, please. Then gives you a short impression of these three dimensions, and you can easily understand that these three dimensions are very similar to this sustainability triangle that you know. We discussed a lot in our European debates, also in our national debates, how to deal with digitalization. Should we produce another dimension, a fourth dimension on digitalization? But then we came to the conclusion that digitalization is really more a cross-cutting issue that affects all other of these dimensions. So it's really a cross-cutting thing. Next slide. Now I can explain a little bit more what the characteristics of these three dimensions of the European cities are. The just city, the first one of these dimensions, it is really a core message also with regard to this idea of the common good, because the common good means that we have to ensure that all parts of our society have to have equal opportunities, justice for all. No one shall be left alone. We need to ensure equal access to public services. What we need are these socially balanced, mixed, and safe neighborhoods. It's about integration of all groups in our society, and it's also important to empower people to really benefit from trends like digitalization, of course. So also not only administrations have to be empowered, but also citizens have to be empowered and acquire certain skills. So that is what's about the just city. The green city, that is also easy to understand. It's of course about everything which is linked to climate change or global warming, but also to other environmental issues, air quality, water quality, soil, land use. This chapter highlights the importance of energy efficiency and this goal of climate neutrality. Of course, it's about this shift to more efficient technologies. Circular economy is, of course, another major issue. Then biodiversity is also mentioned in this chapter, that we have to preserve, regenerate these ecosystems, and what we always call green and blue infrastructure. That's also key, not only in times of pandemic, but also to respond to extreme weather conditions. And finally, also the urban mobility is a major topic here. The shift to more active forms of mobility, how we call it. That means pedestrian and bicycle modes of transportation. And the next slide now is what we understand, or what the new Leipzig Charter understands under this headline, productive city. It's about the economic financial base of sustainable urban development. That means cities need to be attractive business locations. This chapter deals very much with this shift that we can observe to more service-oriented, low carbon economies, which really offers an opportunity to promote a better mix of different functions like working, living, recreation, education, so things can be closer together. And it's also about the transformation of our inner city areas, especially on the background of this digitalization and the retail sector, which really affects our inner city areas. So they really have to change. So these were these three dimensions, and what is also, I think, very important to highlight is that they should not be seen as boxes or silos, because it's the nature of integrated urban development that we have to break these silos, and that all these dimensions closely interact with each other, and they're very much linked between all these dimensions. The next slide. Now we move to these spatial dimensions of the Charter, and there we have the next slide. These three spatial dimensions, spatial scales. The Leipzig Charter, new Leipzig Charter, focuses on the neighborhood level, which was also the particular focus of the Leipzig Charter of 2007. There we only looked at these what we called socially and economically deprived neighborhoods. Now it's a more broader spectrum of dimensions of spatial scales, because we also look at the city as a whole, or what is called here local authorities in their specific national context, because indeed from country to country the definition of a city differs from each other, and also the legal status is different. That's why we call it not city, but this more complex term here. And finally, also the functional urban area, which is which can be a metropolitan area, which can be the links between urban and suburban areas. So all these things are addressed here. And the next slide, there we now move on to these 5 key principles, starting with the next slide with the really key principle, the urban policy for the common good. And this common good issue was indeed not easy to agree on the European scale, because at the beginning there was not really a common understanding of this notion of the common good. What does it mean? And here it's a little bit more explained. Here it's about, of course, social cohesion in our societies, and have a specific pay specific attention to those groups which are most vulnerable, and which is also a characteristic of the common good, is that the authorities, the cities indeed, have to act in the interest of all. They have to balance different interests, public and private interests, market mechanisms. This is a major task indeed for local authorities. It's about accessibility, affordability of services, infrastructure, and again, of course, the empowerment of stakeholders. In the next slide, there we move to what is not really new in this charter, because it was also the main message of the Leipzig Charter of 2007, the integrated approach. That means, breaking the silos, as I have said. Again, balancing of conflicting interests and different effects of different interventions, synergies among these three dimensions that I have reflected on, and trying to avoid conflicts of interest. So that is characteristic of this integrated approach. The next slide is about participation and co-creation, also not really new. Of course, citizen participation is key to integrated urban development. So the involvement of as many stakeholders as possible as a part of really local democracy. So we have to include governmental and non-governmental stakeholders, civil society, private enterprises as well, so the private sector. It's just to share responsibilities, also to find innovation, to find new ideas that come from the citizens or different groups in our cities, and that may also lead to these newer concepts of co-creation and co-design, which is more than participation. And so that is also a new idea in this new Leipzig Charter. And the next slide. Then we move to multi-level governance, also a key aspect of integrated urban development. That means that the different levels have to work together from the local level in the end to the global level. So it's also an appeal that you can find in other documents, like the new urban agenda of UN Habitat. This is also a key aspect there as well. And you have always these bottom-up and top-down mechanisms, which mostly work in parallel. And the next slide is then the place-based approach, the final of these 5 principles of good urban governance. And the place-based approach means that places in their specific, with their specific character, should be the reference points for integrated urban development, that you have to look closely to the local situation and observe what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and what are the needs of the people. So that is the idea of indigenous urban transformation, and we have, of course, different formal and informal instruments to realize this. Next slide. There we move to the bottom line of this graphic here, and you can also show the next slide already, because there we move to that chapter, which is really interesting in this new Leipzig Charter, because the Charter does not leave it with a description of general principles and ideas, but also tries to answer the question how to implement these general principles, and what do cities need to be able to work on this transformation of the cities. And therefore the cities need support. That was a very broad agreement between all stakeholders. And what kind of support do cities need? It's a legal framework conditions that they need. They need the financial resources, of course. They need highly qualified staff. And finally, and that's also important with regard to the common good again, they need access and steerability of infrastructure, public services. So it's always the local authority, the city, that should be on the steering wheel of all these infrastructure, like digital networks, for instance. So that should be not the big IT providers, not the big companies that should steer that, but it should be responsibility of the city. So that is a very strong message of this charter. And the next slide now lead us to the another appeal of the new Leipzig Charter. The cities need also powerful national policy frameworks. So it's a call to create or to strengthen national urban policies in all member states, and the key features of these national urban policies are also described here in the charter. It's about exchange of experience and knowledge. These policies should be a platform for dialogue. What we also need are funding programs, national or regional funding programs, and we need also room for space for experimentation, for innovation, incentives for innovation. So these are also, I can say, these are the main ingredients of our national urban development policy in Germany, so that's we took that more or less as a blueprint, if you may say. And the next slide here, and this is finally the one of the last slides here. It is about what kind of support do cities need from the European level. That might be of less interest for you, but we had on the European scale we have some specific instruments, what we call, for instance, the urban agenda for the EU as an innovative mechanism, a tool to raise cities' voices on the European scale. Then we have specific funding programs from EU structural funds and different exchange programs like TUrBOCLiC, for instance. That's a famous program, famous European program that promotes exchange between cities on integrated urban development. These are the main messages of the new Leipzig Charter. This final chart here only says that we concluded under German EU Council presidency on this new Leipzig Charter as strategic framework, and we concluded also in another document which is a different story, and that is about the urban agenda for the EU as a main implementation vehicle of the principles of the Charter on European scale. But this was, I think, now an overview about the main messages of the new Leipzig Charter, and I am happy if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer all of these questions. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Tilman Buchholz, for your nice presentation. And from this presentation, you have covered the background of this Leipzig Charta and also mentioned the 5 key principles. And also you have highlighted us enlightening us the 3 dimensions, which is very important for city, that how to make a city a just city, green city, and productive city. And it's very nice. And also you have covered the 3 special aspects for managing these things, and also cities need to support how city can be supported. And actually what I found that it is really, you have from this Leipzig Charta, it is nicely covered all the aspects to make a city as a sustainable city. I hope it will be very useful for the cities in Germany. Now we can ask this time for open discussion, or the honorable guests are waiting. You can ask, or you can write anything in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. We can discuss it. Thank you.
Ishtiaq, I see there is a question from Mr. Sorel. If you want, you can also pose the question, or we can read it out. Ishtiaq, we can't hear you. You are mute.
I can ask Mr. Rashid Sohail, please. You can turn on your camera and ask the question.
So thank you, Ishtiaq bhai. If I turn on my camera, I'm not in a good shape. Anyway, I can try to, yeah. So I think you can look me. So thank you very much to Tilman for this very nice presentation on Leipzig Charter. So I just would like to know, as there are many countries, maybe I'm not sure, maybe 30 countries are engaged with this charter. So, and 30 cities or 30 countries, I'm not sure, I forgot that. But anyway, they have their individual local laws, especially for the local government, they have their laws. So how this charter can link with those laws? That was my question. Like, is there any challenges? Is there any gap, or how they can interlink with that one? And the second question is that how this charter is being monitored. Not only this charter is being monitored, rather also the development. Like, this is definitely for sustainable urban development. So how they can monitor through this charter that development as well, like from both angle. One is charter itself, another one is the development monitoring. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for these really very good questions. First, regarding local law. Well, as I have said, this Leipzig Charter does not have any is not legally binding in any case. So it's an informal instrument. So we do not have a direct mechanism to influence local laws by the charter or with this charter. This can only have, yeah, there can be indirect effects in the end. I mean, what we highlight in that charter are some principles, and many of these principles are already implemented in many member states, but there still maybe gaps, and then it is up to the national authorities as well as regional and local authorities to make use of this charter, to take this charter and say, well, we have the certain statements, and what we observe here at home is that we need to adapt our law and then they have to proceed in their own responsibility. But it's not a direct link that is foreseen with the charter. And somehow similar, it is about this monitoring. It's also a very interesting question, because we also discussed it. We also discussed if we should include certain indicators, for instance, in the charter, but we refrained from adding anything formalized with regard to indicators in this charter. We know that we have with the new urban agenda, we have this monitoring reports, and also with the SDGs we have monitoring reports, and we have certain indicators there, and we have long-standing discussions about the indicators. So we wanted to avoid a discussion around indicators indeed, but what I can tell you that for the Leipzig Charta of 2007, we had carried out kind of monitoring. We had an evaluation 5 years after the Leipzig Charta. We had another one 10 years after the Leipzig Charta. We looked into all member states at that time and checked if these principles of the Leipzig Charta are implemented, if you can find traces of the Leipzig Charta in the member states, yeah, the result was quite positive indeed, and we will certainly continue with this kind of evaluation or monitoring. But it is not a formalized process. This is really a voluntary action that we will certainly carry out together with our European partners also in the future.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmuswel, and thank you, Mr. Tillman. Any more questions or comments? I think I have one question to you. That you already mentioned the monitoring things. My another question is that actually, how do you see that which cities are doing good and not doing good? If they are not doing good, or what type of support you are giving to the weak performing cities? Is there any mechanism, or how do you manage it?
Yeah, well, indeed, also here again, no direct mechanism is foreseen in the Leipzig Charter. Well, it is, of course, up to the member states to give support to their cities. There's some very clear messages in the Leipzig Charter, what is necessary on national scale, what kind of support do cities need. And for instance, we in Germany, we have this national urban development policy, where I think we support a lot of our local authorities, not only with pilot projects on innovations, on experimentation, but also via our urban assistance programs. We offer a lot of money at least in relation to our budgets, a lot of money to our cities to fight against urban inequalities, to upgrade neighborhoods, and to fight inequalities. So it is it's a lot that we offer Germany, and we also have other member states which do similar things, like France. They have massive support programs for their cities. and we have specific national urban policies also in Poland, for instance, in Italy, in Spain. It's in the end always up to the member states to support their cities and to promote integrated development. But what we can also do and how we support is by this exchange of experience, because you can always learn from others, and that's also the idea why we have this exchange here today, is to learn from each other and to exchange innovations and use that as an impulse to improve your own policy, and that is something we do also with our neighbors.
Yes, thank you. I think we have another question. May I ask Ms. Kanis Fatima to ask this question?
Hi, thank you. I think do you hear me? Some internet problem at my place. However, I would request, it was a nice presentation, Mr. Tillman, to from his experience, to mention one learning and one recommendation for us.
Okay, yes, we have a lot of interesting insights, interesting learning. So it's not easy for me to spot one. I mean, what we learned, for instance, in the pandemic is that we saw changes in urban mobility, and a very clear shift to non-motorized modes of transportation, and we have a lot of cities in Europe that now promote cycling, and turn car lanes in the streets to bike lanes. For instance, we have good examples in Copenhagen, in Amsterdam, and Berlin learned from this. For instance, here in Germany, now also the city of Berlin introduced a lot of new bike lanes and better infrastructure for cycling and also for walking. So this is, I think, an important message that we learned during the past years, but which was also very much even emphasized during the pandemic.
Yes, thank you for your session. Actually, we are running out of time. We have one points in our chat box and one raised hand. After that, we can close the session. May I ask Ms. Martin to ask this question out of your points you mentioned here?
Yes, hello. Very nice to meet you, and hello from Singapore, and thank you so much for this great presentation. I was wondering, because I'm working on these issues right now, and I'm sure many of the people here in this conversation as well, about the topic of green recovery and the role of cities, and also like lots of these new concepts on the circular city from OECD, from the Donut, from ICLE. And I'm just wondering if like these kind of discussions on green recovery and circular cities also were part of this very, very useful deliberations on what a true modern city would look like on the discussions of the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this discussion, but I can absolutely confirm that this circular economy issue was a top priority, and also the circular economy initiative and all the debates that we also have on the global scale were part of this discussion or feed it into the discussion. And I think the the concept of circular economy and the role of cities is now very well rooted also in this document now. So it is yeah, a very important aspect, no doubt.
Thank you. We have another hand raised, Ms. Sandra Schuster.
Hello. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't hide. My laptop doesn't work well. Very good presentation. I wondered about the empowerment of the public. How do you know when they're empowered, and how do you empower them? I'd be really interested in, I mean, particularly in a developing country context, I wonder how would you go about it? Thank you.
Yeah, very challenging question. How can people be empowered? I mean, we have on the one hand we have these very formal ways of citizen participation in our planning system and also in our planning law, but this is very much formalized and perhaps not that much attractive to the public or to broader groups in our cities. So it's always it's crucial to really try to involve all groups and to address them in an adequate way. That means maybe walking from door to door and trying to start discussions. You need always find a kind of low threshold interaction with citizens and groups, and that is not easy at all. And unfortunately, we don't have a blueprint for all, and no one-size-fits-all solution. So it's, I think, very much depends also on the very specific context in which you work and in which you have to act.
Yes, that is. But very lively discussion is happening. But actually, we are running out of time, and it is really interesting topic, and I think we can discuss more on it. But unfortunately, we think we can close this session today. And I from Lucy and my side, we really would like to thank you for your nice presentation, Mr. Tilman Buchholz, and also our colleagues, those who are still presenting. And before ending this program, I just want to say that can you share your last sentence as a closing remarks, Mr. Tilman Buchholz?
Yeah, I would like to thank you for your attention, and it was a pleasure for me to present you some main messages of the new Leipzig Charter, and I really would like to continue this discussion. I think you have a lot of extremely interesting questions and would have even more questions, but unfortunately there's no time anymore. But I am always willing to continue this debate, and yeah, I wish you all the best on your work on integrated development in your specific context in your country. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. We can learn a lot of things from you.
Thank you. Mr. Buchholz, would you mind turning on your camera quickly so perhaps we can have a picture?
Yes.
Or everybody who would like to turn on the camera, please feel free, and then we can have a group picture. Perhaps, I think your camera is not working, Mr. Buchholz.
Is it not?
No, we cannot see you all the time. So
all the time, really?
Yeah.
I thought because
it was working in the beginning, but
because I don't understand.
Oh, I'm
Because
sorry.
I see the picture of myself here.
Really? So just do the others see you?
No,
I also
could
cannot.
you please just switch off the camera and switch on again? Maybe it can solve.
Now I switched off and I switched on now.
Oh.
Oh,
Why
it's a
doesn't it?
pity. It's a really we will Photoshop you in there.
No,
So
that's really a
everybody
pity.
smile.
I do not really, because I see my own picture here.
And we were seeing you in the beginning. I really don't know what could have.
And then I disappeared. That's
Okay.
good question. I don't know why.
We will Photoshop you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And for those who are joining us in the work group meeting, we will meet in the other link. Thank you all. Thank you, Ishitiak.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.